Hello. Happy Monday morning. Welcome to the 11 a.m. Monday morning marketing webcast with your host, Chris Bernard here, Doc 29 Consulting. Hope your weekend was just stupendous. You probably can't hear me as well. No, you can hear me going away, coming back. Don't know if that makes too big of a difference, but we'll see. So hopefully the weekend was really good for you. We have a lot to cover this morning. I can't think of any general topics to discuss with you other than just keep praying for the state of the state in terms of the United States of America here. It is very important that we pray for our leaders no matter what side of the fence you fall on, whether you're an R or a D or anything in between. So appreciate it. The show notes today, let's see, identifying the right influencers. Especially with Google's latest reviews in terms of the rankings algorithms. You remember a few weeks ago we had talked about Google's adjustment. And they were actually, let's see, that was January, February, March. Yeah, it was March. So mid-March, I believe we did a coverage of this where Google is actually going to look at product reviews different, and they were starting to look at the people that actually submitted those reviews. So long form reviews with technical information, more detail, those kind of things. But they're also looking at who was actually writing those posts. If they had any, what we call, authority, right? In terms of if I'm an expert in electrical engineering, for example, I'm going to tell you how awesome this product is. That's going to have a lot more weight than just Chris Bernard, marketing consultant out in Tampa or whatever it is. Right. So those kind of things were going to have an impact, and they were having a significant impact in specifically review sites at the time. And I think Search Engine Land was covering this at the time. They did a follow-up on it and said, sure enough, that's exactly what's occurring. But can't remember the dude's name. It'll hit me later on in the presentation. It just went through there again. Danny Sullivan commented on, saying basically that those were probably going to be rolled out to other areas, specifically like service-based businesses. And I don't remember where that tweet, I think it was a tweet actually, in response to another comment being posted. But, with service industries, think about that. If you're in a service industry or you have a client that's in a service industry, you need to start kind of building and thinking about that stuff. So one way to do that is to already kind of be proactive in reaching out to what we call influencers, right? So influencers, believe it or not, selecting those right influencers are responsible for 70% of a campaign success when it comes to influencers, right? It's not just how awesome your product is or your client's product or service is. It's about connecting with those right people. And the reason why is because if you think about what an influencer is, influencer, right? They may have thousands and thousands and thousands of real core, I'll call them worshipers, right? Worshipers or followers, right? They're really core, real concentric, right? But then in addition to those, they may even have some fringe circles, organizations, etc., that are important that you may want to be reaching out to as a brand. So 70% of the campaign success revolves around that stuff. So when it comes down to it, there's something very, very, very important to consider. Very important to consider before going after influencers. Some of you may already know what that process is, okay? The first and most important part before you start trying to figure out how your influencers are going to be is to do a customer profile. So some people call this marketing personas, some people call them customer personas, but at the end of the day, knowing who you're targeting is really, really, really important. I'll put it in the show notes here. It was a great post from, I guess it's awario.com in their blog about selecting how to actually kind of craft that. We've done posts before, so maybe I'll put one of those in there as well. But if you think about what that customer profile is, guys, the goal is sales or engagement, right? That's kind of like your GPS. If I knew I wanted to get to Cleveland, Ohio, I would start out with my goal. So I'm going to go to Cleveland, Ohio. Now, there's a lot of roads to get there. And some may ask, why are you going to Cleveland? But beyond that, the goal is that GPS is that goal is set for Cleveland, Ohio. The directions are kind of like the how, right? Those are your customer profile. So these are things like, if it's a she, right? Certain age group, demographics, her mindset, what her life stage looks like, what her typical week looks like, what media she uses, what are kind of her hot button issues, what are her hurdles for not buying from you, right? All of those things kind of meld into that to create typically the output of that is guys like a one pager and who that target market or marketing persona is. If you need help with that, again, reach out to us. We can help you with that. But influencer marketing, there's a lot of definitions for influencer marketing. I'm just going to read with you the one that I think is best, because I think the other ones are limited, by the way. So you can tell me how the other ones are limited based on mine. So influencer marketing is the active, strategic, and deliberate process of engaging notables with your brand, product, or service to not only increase their influencer goals, but to help their followers see how amazing your stuff is and demand it, right? So there's a lot in that sentence, but I found that I went on the search to find a good definition for it, and believe it or not, they all lacked some things. A couple things are really, this is actually fragmented. One, it's not just about creating content. I found a lot of definitions that were just focused on creating content, which is fine, but let's say you have a product, and I've reached out to, one of the products that we represent is called the dust catcher, and it's great, but we need to be able to get it into people's hands, like physically give it to people who are influencers so that they can actually try it and say, wow, this actually is an amazing product. Yes, you could use a cup to catch dust when you're drilling, but this thing can be used over and over again. The way it's designed can go up against the wall, those kind of things. And it will be just very helpful to the consumer. So it's not just about content, it's maybe about product. It might be about getting them on a podcast. It might be about featuring them or having them feature you in a podcast, or you writing a piece for their guests, right? Their followers that would be helpful to them, right? And builds their brand, by the way. So active, strategic, and deliberate process. So we're actually not waiting for this thing to happen. We're actually going out and searching for it. Engaging notables, right? Once we find them with our product, brands, or service, to not only increase their influencer goals, right? So this is one of the missing pieces. They're influencers. They know that they have a prominence, right? They can see their follower counts. They know that. In fact, in many cases, there's affiliates. They're used to this model, folks. So they know that you're there to help leverage their brand and their experience. But the fact is, you can still, if you think about their guests, the people that they're influencing, right? You can help build their brand. Those influencers, you can help build their brand. So keep in mind, you want to know what their goals are. Always focus on them, okay? To help their followers see how amazing your stuff is. If you have something of value and they have followers, right? All you need to do is basically, you're looking for the opportunity to introduce your brand, product, or service to them so they can engage with you, right? You're assuming your stuff is helpful and it solves problems, and they need to hear about it. This is a win-win-win for everyone, right? Does that make sense? So the key to this, believe it or not, is about relationships, establishing trust, right? And again, based on Google's algorithm adjustments for reviews, I assume that this is going to be kind of rolling out in general for a lot of different things. Okay, so the goals: authentic connection with your brand to influencer base, right? So think about that target market again, right? So that's the first goal. Second goal: recognized authority, testimonial of your brand. So if this individual's an authority of this specific area or niche, right, you're going to want to go them giving that thumbs up and saying, yeah, I approve this product, or I've used this product and it's really good. That's the feather in the cap, right? So it's a recognized authority. Basically, it's a testimony from someone who has tremendous following and value in terms of their opinion. So those are the two goals. Now, there's a lot of different influencer types, guys. So Search Engine Land actually breaks it out, and I like the breakout there, by the way. 4 different kind of categories. So first one is going to be your macro influencer, okay? And these are people, the macro influencers are 500,000, right? 500,000 plus. This is a big group of people, okay? Second one is going to be your mid influencers, MIDI influencers, they call them, right? So that's their 100 to 500,000. Okay. So that second kind of tier. Again, we're kind of taking real big and we're getting a little smaller. The rising influencers. Now they can be decreasing too, I guess. But at the end of the day, we're going to be looking at some tools to give us the stats of how big their actual influencer base is. They might be rising, getting bigger. They might actually be getting smaller. Who knows? But that's 50,000 to 100,000, obviously. Okay. And then we have the micro influencers. And guys, that's going to be up to that 50,000, right? Mark on that. So a couple important notes with this, right? So typically, again, if you go real big, let's just kind of draw it out here, right? Okay. Big people, more diversity, right? Smaller amount, more niche. Okay. So that's kind of, in many cases, we're going to be finding that this area in here, that's these guys, that micro influencers, they're going to be, although a smaller audience, they're going to have a potentially larger chance to, let's say, conversion, reach, kind of a cohesion of messaging, all of that stuff that might be advantageous to you, right? So keep that in mind. Now, there's three ways to find influencers. I'm going to stick close to the show notes because I don't want to forget anything in this one as well. So the first one is actually use the social media channels themselves. It's pretty logical. A lot of these have significant technologies built into them to help you kind of identify, target, flesh out some of the things that are important. In many cases, those we still a lot of times use the actual social media channels themselves, because the tools, the third-party tools, in many cases, either because not all of them have the same features, right? The social media channels, those third-party tools will often try to make it simpler to kind of look across all of those social media tools. The problem is you start losing some of that functionality in those social media tools independently. So you kind of have to weigh some of those options a little bit. The second one, so that's social media channels themselves. The second one is going to be your paid and free influencer tools and social media monitoring tools. And the third one, agency. Agency can help you with this stuff, okay? But the first one, let's go down this path. We'll just keep the right now. So the social media tools themselves, right? One of the key critical components with this is to focus on the specific channel. Once you identify who your marketing persona is, who you're going to be going after, and then, by the way, it might be multiple. Most businesses, again, I've mentioned this time and time again, have not just one, but 2, 3, potentially 4, maybe even seen as many as 5 different specific marketing personas that they're going after. And that's all going to depend on your product and service, how they come in the funnel, maybe even media channels people use, age of user, right? Sometimes it's simply the same person following different life stages all the way through. So there's a couple different ways to do that. But you have to focus on your marketing persona, and then basically you need to pick a channel that's most appropriate for you, because otherwise you're going to be all over the place, okay? So if you're B2B, the default is going to be your LinkedIn, right? If you're going to be doing more, let's say, visual stuff, you can use Facebook, but Instagram tends to be a real winner with some of that. And it's still, you can pump the same kind of data off of it, but I would suggest even customizing that, because a Facebook environment is a little different than an Instagram environment, okay, in terms of that. And remember, your guests are using apps to access that information, so how it looks on the phone is going to be different, right, depending on the app. So use the real estate that you're given, right? Then once you've done that, you say, okay, I'm going to go down this path, right? You need to start researching. And generally speaking, there's a couple ways to research, regardless of what method or which media channel is, right? Look at your influencers. Look at the specific tags and who's tagged in their process. So with any post, a lot of times, and all of them have that where you can basically add it in with your little pound or whatever it is. But the hashtags are kind of like your file system. You guys have all seen that probably. Whatever word, right? So keyword, and there'll be multiple potentially, right? Right? You got a whole list of words that can kind of go in through that. Got some of my It's bugging me. So at the end of the day, go research the keywords. You can also go ahead and look at the specific people they've tagged, right? So, and you're looking at you're doing research and intel at this point, but use those hashtags to identify social media accounts that post content. So if they've shared something and they're using a specific hashtag, you can follow that, you can click that hashtag typically and see what other posts are being generated off of that or how those are filed. And you can kind of do some of that intel and research going on. And then you can even use that then to find people that are influencers. Look at their counts and things like that. Look at their engagement, what content's ranking, see what's important in terms of those specific individuals, right? A company that does, it's called Square Lovin'. I should probably put the link in there somewhere. Let's see. It's, in fact, actually, it's Square Lovin', LOVIN.com. I make no money off of this. I'm just trying to be helpful, guys. They can kind of help you with some of that stuff. And then manual search queries, although they can often take a lot of time, you guys. So, I mean, but you can create that list. Fine. Finding influencers, way number 2. So this is going to be our paid and influencer tool model, right? So in finding influencers, there's companies like Awero, which is a company that I just shared with you a few moments ago about the customer profile stuff. Again, thinking about their target audience, that was a good idea. Upfluence, Talkwalker, Aspire, IQ, Neo Reach, Julius, Hyper, Open Influence. Those are all ones that we've kind of researched or looked at. We use BuzzSumo right now in terms of using the tools in terms of finding influencers, and you can use that for YouTube or for Facebook or any of those. Basically, you do your keyword research, and basically you get the chance to see articles published by people and how much they're shared, right, and all that across different media channels like Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and all those. And then you get a chance to see who's the publisher in that. You can do a lot of research there. We use BuzzSumo. I think it's got some limitations to it, so I started to kind of research, and maybe you guys want to provide some feedback. And there's 2 that I'm kind of looking at that I think that kind of provide some merit. First of all, it's a company called Grin, Grin. I should probably put that link in there too. What I really like about Grin, guys, is this. So they allow you to use like your normal systems like email, right? Especially in B2B organizations. Checking social media is great. Correspondence with that in the post land is fantastic. But if I've moved past social media connections with them and I'm actually working with them almost as a partner, right? I'm generating emails off of them. We're corresponding typically that way because we've taken it now off into a more personalized kind of situation. Outlook, Gmail, Slack, SMS, all they say can be integrated into Grin. And what's nice about that, again, is it keeps everything in a nice dashboard. Was at a conference a couple years ago. It may have been the Content Marketing World Conference in Cleveland. I don't remember. I can picture the stage. I just don't remember what city it was. But this was pre-COVID. But the VP of marketing at Bank of America was sitting up there, and basically they were, the question was influencers, and they were using Excel, just like a lot of us do, to keep track of influencers and communications and things like that. It's like, really, we haven't moved past this. So that was one thing that really enticed me about Grin. The second one I'm kind of interested in, and we're kind of exploring it, is called Tagger Media, Tagger Media. And what I like about this tool for finding influencers is that they apparently have a special kind of secret sauce when it comes to psychographic information that's integrated directly on into their listening engine. So that part of it, since we're so, cognitive psychology is important, right? How people perceive and research things, how they go ahead and, identify what's important. Taking a lot of that brain science stuff and getting it into marketing is something that we specialize in. So that's something that's kind of interesting to me. The third way, so that was one. So 1, social media channels themselves. 2 is using these tools, right? These basically paid and free influencer tools and social media monitoring. And then the third way is basically, again, just tell an agency, right? So an agency is going to walk you through a model as to, what are you trying to achieve, right? Who do you want to reach? Again, who is the target customer, that, marketing persona, right? Do you have a budget for this? What's your ETA in terms of timeline? What are your goals? Okay, they're going to walk you through that kind of stuff. Again, if what we're explaining to you seems like it's complicated, it's not incredibly complicated. Basically, you're going to a party and you're scanning the audience, and you may know a couple of people in there, but you recognize that you all affiliated by a certain thing, right? But you recognize there are certain people that kind of stand out. And at the end of the day, you're kind of trying to maybe go introduce yourself to that person that stands out, because they either are in your target market, or they're aware or can provide access to people in that specific target area that you want, right? So we do this normally, but digital tends to be a little bit harder, especially considering the perception and the reality may be a little different, right? So either way, this isn't incredibly hard, but in many cases, there's a lot of steps. Is that fair? There are a lot of steps. So yes. Social media analytics tools to find influencers. Okay, so we're going to go down this path in a little bit more exhaustive detail. I will put these in the show notes so you don't have to keep track too much or too hard on this stuff. Keyword research. Okay, this all comes back to keyword research again. Keywords, always people are saying keywords are dead. Keywords are not dead. Man, I don't know if you guys can even see this anymore. Blue is hard to get off. The black is easier to get off. I don't know why. I have to really push. Oh well. So keywords come back to everything, right? They're concepts. When we're researching things, when we're searching online for just miscellaneous things, even if we're not directly putting keywords in, we're giving keyword concepts to Facebook and Google all of the time, regardless of whether it's a mobile device or desktop or tablet, okay? Our voice searches, the same thing. Our directions, those are all key. If you think about them as keyword concepts, they're looking for the signals, the digital signals that they can use, right, to provide content or the most relevant content to the guests. I don't care if it's Facebook or Google or Instagram. It doesn't matter, okay? So keywords drive everything. Words or phrases that potentially collaborators use. So this could be product related. This could be niche related. This could be competitors. This could be brands or product names. And then basically we're looking up those. We could potentially look at competitors' accounts too. And again, we kind of talked a little bit about that with the hashtags. And you can even use things like Uber Suggest or Rank Tracker, right, to provide some kind of a launch pad in terms of potentially things you want to go look up. Okay, so that's the first step, is keyword research. Second step, monitoring the keywords. Okay, and all these have the ability to kind of set up either triggers, alerts, those kind of things. And those can be, I'd look for those keyword phrases and you build them out. I don't want to say the word broad. That's the wrong word. How do you say it? In depth, like a lot of them across your products and services, suites and all of that, so that you have a very vast view of things. And then basically it's kind of a philosophy in IT land. I'm in the marketing world, right? So with big companies, and I love my IT brothers and sisters out there. I'm not meaning to poo-poo. This is just a reality, right? So there's two philosophies, right? You can go ahead and you allow access to everything on the web for your marketing, coordinator, right, at big agency X. But he can't access GoToMeeting, for example, because everything needs to be approved through IT land, right? So they've locked everything down except these authorized things. So very tight controls, right? And then the other aspect is everything's open, but then IT has things they use for signals, and they basically start locking things down individually. So there's two different philosophies, right? The philosophy here, folks, is this. You want to find the best influencers possible. So go wide and broad, Okay. And then start using things like negatives or locations, or even what they call Boolean queries, right? In order to, this and this or this, or sometimes they have like positive and negative. So include this thing or not include it. It all depends on which social media channel or which tool we're talking about. But think about getting that really broad scope and then narrowing down. I have too many. I have so many I can't even look at. Well, bring it down. Kind of use those negatives, use the if nots to kind of bring that segment down to something that's realistic, right, for you to go ahead and kind of look at. Okay, that's number 2, monitoring keywords. 3, working with the results. Now you can view and just engage. So once you've got this list of individuals to go after, you can actually start looking at individual pieces of content and then start engaging them directly with posts, either commenting, engaging in those specific posts, or maybe reaching out to build out, their brand. Again, we'll kind of discuss the action steps here at the end in terms of, okay, when we find those influencers, but we can actually start engaging. Okay. Or we can actually take it even a little bit a step further. Once we've got those, we can then use that collected data, right, to get a much more comprehensive list that we've already mentioned using some of the tools that we had already. But you can start scoring them or ranking them. And things like, you can use a whole bunch of things. So let's assume maybe it's location. If you have a product or service that's structured to a specific area, my guess is you probably had already filtered that out. But let's say you didn't, you can score those differently. Or if let's say they're a writer for a specific organization, or they've written .gov piece, or they have published works. Let's say they're a doctor. You can score those differently in terms of how those influencers are there. And you may have to export that data to do that. You may feel more comfortable doing it anyway that way. But either way, you can score them on that list. And then you can start being much more strategic about who you actually go ahead and engage. So there's a lot to be said for that. You can also then you could also potentially look at what they posted. So if I've got this list and we use like BuzzSumo to kind of see some of those articles, then depending on how long ago the article was written, could be the number of times it was shared with a specific organization or written for an organization. Maybe it's a keyword within those post content that we can kind of filter stuff out. So there's a lot that you can do to kind of help you identify those top influencers that are going to be most aligned with your product, your brand, or your service, right? So all of that stuff, all those tactics could actually be used to get down. They're really designed to get down to one specific thing, right? That perfect opening to be able to talk to that influencer. And again, what I was finding was that when with the other articles, it was really about content, but it doesn't have to be. Remember, these are people that you're writing to. Okay, so be friendly. You might find that part of your strategy to reach out to them is just to be friendly and encourage them and to follow and contribute to their content at first. Your strategy might be to, like in the dust catcher's case, to send them a product and say, look, I'd be really interested in getting your opinion on it. Would you be open for me sending this to you to try? Okay, and then there's a strategy to follow up with them and potentially allow them to easily submit a review or something like that. Think about the strategy once you actually end up, what the goal is once you end up reaching out and connecting with them and following them through that pipeline, right? You might offer right to offer content for their guests. We already talked a little bit about that. You might offer to sponsor, because remember, a lot of times these individuals, they've been building their brand for many, many moons. So they already know that people want them for these kind of things, right? But they already have ways to get involved with their brand. And that might be to actually sponsor specific content pieces that are aligned with your brand, product, or service. Or maybe there's events that they have that are going on that might be helpful, that they're contributing to or creating for their followers. And you can get involved in that, right? Think about trade shows, right? The trade shows are conferences. They have all these great brands. Those brands don't do that because they feel like it. The brands do that because they have something to sell into that that group of influencers followers, right? So it's kind of the exact same thing, if that helps maybe understand some clarity there. Also, you can maybe feature them in a story. People love to talk about themselves. Okay. So you may want to say, look, I'd love to feature you in a story, or I'd love to get a quote from you. Or, when we send that product to them, I would love, if they had a good experience, I'd love to get a quote from them in order that I can write a press release and I can feature them in that press release. I would love to be able to do that. Maybe I can do a Zoom meeting with them and kind of engage them in that piece. Or maybe you have a third party like us. We've done this before where, you have a product, you have the influencer, you've got the company that makes the product, right? And then basically we have an interview with these three individuals, and we're kind of asking questions of them both, so that there's like an intermediary in there, right? So it's not a hard sell, it's an informational piece. So those are kind of just ideas out there for you. So big picture considerations, you guys, before we move on. Does the influencer, do they really kind of align with your target audience, right? So a lot of what we just discussed is tools to help you do that, right? Second thing, they're influencing engagement rate, right? I can't tell you how many times we go in, and even though we're looking at an influencer, apparently an influencer, all they do is write content, but there's no engagement with their guests. So yes, do they actually have a following? Yeah, but not so much. And I'll put you can research it yourself. You're likely to come across those individuals. Now compare that to somebody like The Rock, Dwayne Williams, who is, one of the highest paid actors of all time, right? Go watch his posts. You can argue whether or not they meet your brand and stuff like that, but no one can tell me that his engagement level isn't like through the roof. In fact, even his brands, like Zoa's the new one out, which is the drink or whatever it is, his brand engagement is what's rocketing that brand. I don't think they spend a dime in advertising or marketing, but because he has the influencer power, his audience is that 500,000 or more. But his attitude, he's that big brand, that big influencer, but he can do anything from vodka to sporting equipment, but it kind of fits into his niche, right? That kind of attitude. So again, have a high engagement or not. Third big picture consideration, does the influencer meet public image brand guidelines? Just like I mentioned a moment ago. Again, The Rock, love him or hate him, he took a lot of flack last year before the elections when his support ended up coming back behind Biden. And I'm sure that hurt his brand in many cases. He may have been better off to just stay out of it. Maybe I'm wrong. But I remember looking at the posts and going, it seemed like half the people that were commenting at that time were just like, what are you doing, man? So again, good, bad, doesn't matter. In this case, the jury's out and he has a perspective of that. I think he's doing really great, doing some awesome stuff. But again, you have to consider whether or not that influencer, that his persona and his followers kind of match in terms of your brand guidelines, right? Bonus tip for you, right? Create an alert with influencer's name. See what's being said about them. This is not hard, you guys. You can use Google Alerts for this kind of thing. A lot of these social listening tools will allow you to see published content that's going on and basically alert you. Send in an email or text or whatever it is, and with that link to that article, so that you can now take action. If these are your top 10 or 15 influencers, and you're going to be using them directly in your marketing pitch, these are the little hooks in the water. Definitely want to make sure that you're monitoring that, because you don't control that anymore, right? This is the concept. They don't work directly for you, but you want to be able to contribute and build their brand, right? Which provides value not only them, but also to your organization as well, in terms of product sales, engagement, et cetera, whatever goals you've established. So again, those are some things that you really need to be considering before you start engaging in influencer marketing. Because again, these are people, you tick them off on that front end, you're not likely going to have the opportunity to talk to them again. And maybe we need to talk a little bit more about strategy. The big takeaway there is just be friendly. Like, these are people. We're all just people. So Okay, so you identify this individual out of your 20 or 30 that you really want to go ahead and make sure that you try to engage, right? Make sure that's a good experience. Be friendly. Try to help them build their brand. Try to understand their goals a little bit. You don't have to ask them, what are your goals? Go look. They're kind of telling you what their goals are based on, the things that they're publishing, right? What they're saying on their websites and things like that. You're able to see where they generate their revenue from. So you can assume if they've got a couple of revenue generating spots on their website, you can assume that's a goal of theirs. So if you're going to engage them, think about how to make that a win and win and then win for everyone. Okay. So there's a lot of tips in here, a lot of tools, but at the end of the day, this is about a relationship game. Okay. And reaching out to those proper influencers properly and helping them achieve their goals at the same time as introducing your brand, product, or service to their followers is a huge opportunity, and I'm going to argue significant opportunity based on what Google's changes are coming down the pipeline. So I really appreciate the time, you guys, today. Thanks for allowing me to chat on for 36 minutes. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to reach out. You can subscribe at marketingwebcast.live, and I'll send an email reminder out to you guys on Monday morning for this. I'll also send you links to like the show notes and stuff like that. That'll be helpful for you, and additional tips that you're not going to be able to get just by watching these independently. So feel free to sign up. If you feel like you want to talk, you can also go to ROI by Chris. That is ROI, as in return on investment, by Chris.com, and just set up a 15-minute consult. We can talk through your issues. We can look at website analytics. We can talk about email campaigns, or if you got the right target, market personas, B2B sales strategies. We can talk about whatever it is you guys want. AdWords, you name it. We can get somebody on the horn with us and be able to identify and come up with some pretty good either confirmations of things that you think you need to do, or if we're starting fresh, well, we can help you there too. So thanks for the opportunity this morning. Subscribe if you like this channel. Subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you guys on Monday. God bless, and take care.